Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
What you'll hear are adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And Paranormal Expeditions.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. One more thing. You just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today. The date is April 14th, 1561, and this is A Moment in Time. Imagine waking up to see an unknown and mysterious objects were fighting in your sky. And instead of seeing a bright yellow sun, you see a red one. The imagery that just popped into your head is what occurred in April 1561 at Nuremberg, a small German city. The incident is properly known as the 1561 celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg, or as I like to call it, the UFO battle at Nuremberg. It is also one of the strangest days in human history, and this is why. Now, usually in these segments, we present radio broadcasts from the past. However, it might interest you to know that in 1561, radios were uncommon. Even newspapers were not a thing, but they did have what were called broadtext sheets. These captured the news, and some of them still exist today, including this report from Hans Glasser. It was originally written in German, but I've translated it into English. In the morning of April 14, 1561, at daybreak between 4 and 5 a.m., a dreadful apparition occurred in the sun, and this was seen in Nuremberg before the gates and in the country by many men and women. At first, there appeared in the middle of the sun two blood-red semicircular arcs, just like the moon in its last quarter. And in the sun, above and below and on both sides, the color was blood. There stood a round ball of partly dull, partly black in color. Likewise, there stood on both sides, as a torus, above the sun, such blood-red ones and other balls in large numbers, about 3 in a line and 4 in a square, also some alone. In between these globes were visible and a few blood-red crosses, between which were blood-red strips becoming thicker to the rear and in the front malleable like the rods of reed glass which were intermingled. Among them 2 big rods, one to the right, the other to the left, and within these small and big rods were 3, also 4 more globes. These all started to fight amongst themselves so that the globes which were first in the sun flew out to the ones on both sides. Thereafter the globes standing outside the sun and in the small and large rods flew into the sun. The globes flew back and forth among themselves and fought vehemently with each other for over an hour. And when the conflict out of the sun was the most intense, they became fatigued to such an extent that they all, as said above, flew from the sun down upon the earth as if all burned, and they wasted away on the earth with intense smoke. After all of this, there was something like a black spear, very long and thick. The shaft pointed to the east and then pointed west. Whatever such signs mean, God alone knows. Although we have seen many kinds of signs in heaven which were sent to us by Almighty God to bring us to repentance. After all, the God-fearing will by no means discard these signs, but will take it to heart as a warning from their merciful Father in heaven, that they will mend their lives and faithfully beg God that we may avert His wrath, including the well-deserved punishment on us all. Amen. Written by Hans Glasser, a letter painter of Nuremberg. Well, there you have it. What did the people see that day? We may never know since there weren't any cameras to capture the event. However, there is a drawing that exists, and it's quite disturbing. I will have a link to it in the show notes. That's it for this moment in time. Welcome to the podcast. We are in for another UFO-themed show today, and if you gathered anything from our opening story this week, I think you figured out that we're going to have a lot of them. From Audible, we review an audiobook that is all about them. Then we head to Your Stories, where we have 4 great tales that come from Texas to Oklahoma, then to Nevada, and we end up in California. Wow! I know, I'm pretty excited about that. Our featured story comes from the OTR Classic series, X-1, and it looks at some strange lights in the Bighorn Glacier.
That sounds pretty good.
I think so too. We will end today's show with a few OTR commercials. Now, I will bet you're saying, Ron, where is the 5-minute mystery? You gave us that weird UFO battle thingy, but there was no mystery about that. I want my FMM and...
We want it now!
Okay, you shall have it now.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by the UFO. On today's show, we have lots of unidentified flying things, and this story has nothing to do with them. So having said that, here is this week's mystery.
Can you feel the excitement in the air?
Police headquarters, Inspector Hoskin speaking.
Police.
Yeah? Yeah, what is it?
Sam Blake speaking, 37 Hudson Way. Come quick, my wife is dead. Gas.
Dead? How long?
I don't know. Just got home.
37 Hudson Way. Okay, be right out. And in the meantime, you better throw open those windows and doors. Hey, Mike, grab your chapeau. We got some calling to do. Mr. Blake?
Yes, Inspector. Come right in.
Thanks. Oh, Mr. Blake, my assistant, Mike Kusky.
Howdy.
Where's the body? You haven't moved her?
No, sir. She's here in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
Right where I found her.
Of course. Well, Mike and I will just have a look.
And there she is, Inspector. Dead as a doornail.
Gassed, all right. You can still smell a little.
It looks like most of the gas came from the oven. The door's still a little open. What's that?
My simple powers of deduction would say it's a bird.
Oh, there it is, a canary. A bird cage in the kitchen, huh?
Yeah, but right now we better get back to Mr. Blake. Now, Mr. Blake, if you don't mind, there are just a few routine questions. I'd like to know exactly what happened.
Well, sir, I just come home from the game tonight. I'm quite a fan, but my wife didn't care much for sports, so I usually went alone. As I was saying, the game was over about 10:20, I should say.
And you came right home?
Yes, sir. I drove and made it home about 11. I thought I smelled something when I tried the door, and the minute it was open, it hit me in the face. Gas all over the place. I rushed in, calling to Jane, and when I went to turn off the jets, I found her there on the floor, dead.
I see.
Of course, I knew she was gone when I found her. First thing I could think of was to call the police.
Your wife has obviously been dead since about 10. Mr. Blake, if you don't mind my asking, just what happened in the last few seconds of play at the game?
Why, Zakowitz fumbled and Tarleton recovered for an 80-yard touchdown run. Well, look here, Inspector. What are you driving at?
Just that in case this shouldn't be suicide, I wanted to know if you could back up your alibi.
Not suicide. What are you driving at, boss?
Yes, Inspector. What are you driving at?
Just this, Mr. Blake. I arrest you for the murder of your wife.
What did Mr. Blake overlook? Do you know the clue? In a moment, we'll hear firsthand from the inspector. But first...
Okay, I think I got this one.
You think, or you know?
I know. A little bird told me.
Oh, that is a bloody good clue.
I thought so. I came up with it all by myself.
Okay, I have another.
Let's hear it.
What's good for the goose is also good for the gander.
I get that one. I wonder if the listeners will.
I think they will. After all, birds of a feather will flock together.
That they will, or they'll die together.
And now let's see if your powers of deduction are the same as the inspector's. You can't arrest me. I was at the game till 10:20. I proved it. And you said yourself my wife died 20 minutes before.
I haven't forgotten the powers of radio, Mr. Blake, but there are a few things you did forget. First of all, if you wanted to kill your wife and then make it look like she was overcome by gas, it might have helped if you'd turned on enough gas. Your wife was dead from another cause, the source of which will be found in an autopsy before the gas jet was even opened. The thing you forgot, Mr. Blake, is that canaries are quite as susceptible to gas as human beings. If there had been enough gas in that kitchen to kill a woman, a small bird certainly could not have survived. And your singing canary is still alive, Mr. Blake. Very much alive.
Well, how about that? The bird was the thing, and I think we did a great job with our clues.
A bird in hand is worth two in the bush.
Okay, that was a bit over the top, and frankly, it just doesn't make any sense.
I think you're being a bit too critical.
And you're being dumb. Just saying. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, computer, Kindle. Whatever you have, you can listen to Audible on it. So what am I listening to? Alien encounters, true-life stories of aliens, UFOs, and other extraterrestrial phenomenon. In this compelling examination of stories, author Rupert Matthews looks afresh at key episodes of alien activity on Earth and sheds light on the many mysterious phenomenon associated with it. From Roswell to Taizé, the book dissects fascinating eyewitness accounts of communication and contact with alien beings, as well as chilling cases of abduction. It also sifts through evidence of governmental cover-ups. Here's a clip from the beginning of the book.
I first became interested in UFOs during the Great Warminster Mystery, as it was then known, back in the 1960s. I was just a child at the time, but the exciting stories in the press caught my imagination. The idea that aliens from another planet could be visiting our quiet English countryside fired my imagination. We had friends in the area, so I was able to visit the town that was quickly becoming legendary and spend time up on Cradle Hill looking for flying saucers. I didn't see any, but that did nothing to dampen my enthusiasm. Since then, I have grown up, got a job, and had a family, but I have never forgotten the excitement of those early days. As the story of alien encounters has unfolded, I have been a keen enthusiast, I followed the first stirrings of the Roswell incident with interest. I kept abreast of affairs on the UFO front, and was amazed by the revelations coming from those who had suffered alien abductions. And like so many other people, I dashed to see the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Great cinema. And then I decided to sit down one day and think about it all. I trawled back through my newspaper cuttings and library of first-hand accounts. I was looking for some clue as to what was really going on. Everyone seemed to have an opinion. Some thought aliens were visiting Earth, others that this was impossible. Still more subscribed to the concept that the U.S. government was guilty of a huge cover-up, and a few believed every word the U.S. government said. I decided to get right back to the only evidence that counts, the reports given by those who have had an alien encounter. I came at these reports afresh, trying to clear my mind of any preconceived notions or ideas. I looked for features that the reports had in common, that might tie them together and give a clue as to the solution to the puzzle.
Now, doesn't that narrator sound just a little bit like Mark Twain? It did to me. The book was actually narrated by Bill Roberts, and he does an amazing job of bringing the stories to life. There are 10 casebook studies that give in-depth analysis of some of the most important alien encounters of all time. These include the pilot who saw a formation of an alien aircraft, the Sicaro incident, and the encounter of Betty and Barney Hill on Highway 3. This book meticulously researched the strange events that continue to spark fierce debate today. If you doubt the existence of extraterrestrials, prepare to be convinced. You can have alien encounters today. Here's what Audible has set up for us. They are offering a free audiobook and 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out their service. This includes free access to the Audible Plus catalog, which is updated monthly with new titles. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories, and you can get your free book today. Thank you, Audible.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
Well, it's time for another round of UFO stories from you guys. Over time, I collect them and like to present them together. A montage of flying objects, so to speak. However, not every email I get is an encounter, like this one from John Beck from the great state of Texas. Hello, Ron. I heard you asking for UFO stories on your show, and all I can say about that is I was a U.S. Navy electronics technician, second class. I specialized in communications and radar. I was stationed on an LSD ship for 5 years. I spent over 3 years at sea being attached to the ship, with 2 7-month deployments and various workups and training operations in between. In all my time at sea, I never saw anything that couldn't be explained quickly or easily. I was even in the Bermuda Triangle for a period of time and connected every spectrum of monitoring device that I could and waited to see if I would see any blips or anomalies in the radio portion of the EM spectrum. Never saw anything weird or strange. I'm not saying that UFOs, aliens from another planet, or anything else that deals with the phenomenon aren't real. I'm just saying I never saw any evidence of it during my military service. I wish I had. John Beck, Texas. Well, John, thank you for that. Oftentimes we forget just how rare and unique these stories are. Thank you for reminding us, and thank you for your service. Our next story comes from Ray Morris. It is a combo tale that merges two paranormal genres. I don't think we've had a story quite like this one. He has titled it, Bigfoot is an Alien? Hey Ron, I live outside Gore, Oklahoma, by a resort called Fin and Feather. My buddy lives down the road about a mile from me. One day I decided instead of walking down the highway to get to his house, I would cut straight across the woods. About 1,000 feet in, I came to a steep slope with a creek at the bottom, and then it rose sharply again. I got down to the bottom of the ravine when I heard a loud rustling noise up the hill behind me. I turned around and saw a dark silhouette of a human figure, since the sun was behind it. Immediately I became aware of its massive size. I estimated it to be about 8 feet tall. At first I thought it was the angle and lighting, but then I became aware of the smell. Also, this deep guttural throat sound. All the hair on my neck stood straight up. And then it walked towards me. It had a pretty fast gait, and I noticed it wasn't walking around the trees or using its arms to move branches out of the way. I realized it was walking straight towards me and mowing everything down in its path with its arms to its side. I mean, 2 or 3 inch saplings were bending and breaking like blades of grass, with no indication that it was even aware that it was tramping through the forest that no man could run through. Well, I turned and ran for my life. Couldn't move the branches out of the way like he did, or quick enough for that matter, but I did cover a great distance in a short amount of time. My ears were buzzing, my eyes were burning, and I was bleeding from every area of exposed skin. Because of the mad rush, or mad dash to escape, I never looked back. I made it up onto the road and then to my friend's house. I was about to knock when I heard an explosion. I turned around and saw a round disc shoot up into the sky from the area that I had been. I watched as it stopped, hovered a bit, and then began a full-on spin. The faster it spun, the more opaque it became, until it was completely gone. It was replaced with a bright white light, which also quickly faded. I turned around and knocked on the door. My friend didn't answer. He wasn't even home. Ryan Morris, Gore, Oklahoma. Well, Ryan, I've heard a lot of people talk about the idea that Bigfoot is actually an extraterrestrial. It helps make this guy a little more elusive. Is he a being from another planet or another dimension? Your story would suggest the latter. Thank you for sharing it. This story comes from Nevada. Leonard Strickland, who likes to be called Leo, says that he's a longtime UFO enthusiast. He first began looking to the stars in 1976 after he heard the story of Betty and Barney Hill. He had watched the 1975 television film, The UFO Incident. Ever since then, he has been hooked and has been part of a local UFO observation group based in Henderson, Nevada. Nevada has always been a hotbed for sightings, which makes Leo's story a bit more interesting. I had the pleasure of chatting with him on the phone. I found him to be quite the character, knowledgeable, and most of all, I believe him. Here is his story, The UFO Incident. I've been looking for UFOs, lights in the sky, or anything that can't be explained for over 40 years. In that time, I never saw a thing. I have all the equipment, cameras, night scopes, audio devices, and a very expensive Luftwatch 7200 high-resolution video capture camera. This is what you need if you want to get any useful images from the night sky. I've been on stakeouts, group missions, spent 3 weeks in the desert, and found, saw, and captured nothing. That is until May 14th, 2018. I was alone. I decided to go camping at Stevens Camp, which has some of the best open skies in the country. There is an area with rolling hills that aren't much better than dunes, but offer some excellent views of the countryside. After I set up camp, I made my way to the top. I had brought a camp chair, quite comfy actually, and settled in for the evening. I had an array of capture devices, but didn't end up using a single one of them. When something really does happen, I learned that you tend to forget things until it's too late. I was about 2 hours in and had just finished a turkey and Swiss cheese sandwich and a bourbon and coffee. I should stop here and say that it was only my first drink of many that night. So I was still clear-headed at the time. Whenever I sit in the desert, I'm struck by the profound peace of it all. I think that's why I've stuck with UFO watching all these years. There's nothing that compares to sitting in the desert at night alone and a sky full of stars. It was then I noticed, in the distance, a series of lights to the east. There were a lot of aircraft in the sky over Nevada, so you learn pretty quickly to curb your excitement at such things. What was different here is that there were 3 of them, and that caught my attention. I watched them for some time. It was then I realized they weren't moving. At first, I thought of a helicopter group, but the lights were too bright for that. So now, I'm a bit more interested. I grab my scope and take a closer look. That didn't help at all. Just 3 obscure lights. However, I could tell that they were multicolored, which was interesting, I thought. After about 5 minutes, the lights appeared to get larger. I think it was an optical illusion because I realized they weren't actually getting any brighter. They were moving and heading straight for my position. Now I was truly interested. I watched as they grew in strength and, more importantly, started to take shape. It wasn't 3 independent crafts. In point of fact, it was one very large thing. 1 light at the center and 2 on each side. Now, it was here that I should have grabbed my camera. I can't explain why, but I didn't. I just sat in awe and watched as it approached. The ground around me began to shake, but there wasn't any sound that I could hear. At last, it arrived, and it was at this very moment I decided to grab for my camera and began to set it up. Too late. It shot up into the night sky and was gone. I had had my very first and only UFO encounter, and I offer no proof that it ever happened. I have been back to that spot many times. During the lockdown, it was a place of refuge for me. I've never seen anything like it or since. Oh, there have been strange lights, but if you wait long enough and have the proper equipment, you can always identify what you see. That's the curse of knowing what you're doing. I hope one day to have that experience again. Next time, I won't screw up. Leonard Strickland, Nevada. I love this story a lot, and I want to thank Leo for taking the time to chat with me. It was a real pleasure. What is not to believe about this story? Even without proof, what he saw is hard to refute when you consider his candor about most of his sightings. I think a very large percentage of tales that we hear are things that could be explained, but just plain were not. Thank you, Leo. Our last story is a short one, but I thought it should be included. It comes from return listener Camille Brewer from Redding, California. She has titled her UFO encounter, Ron, It Happened Again. Hey, Ron. Still love the show and want to say that it happened again. I was hiking in the West Hills and I saw another UFO. It was saucer-shaped, silver in color, and looked like something right out of a 50s science fiction film. It hovered a bit near the ocean surface, then dove straight into the water. So technically, I guess you'd have to call this a USO. Keep doing what you're doing. We all love you. Camille Brewer, Redding, California. Well, thank you for sharing your second story with us, Camille. I tried to find your first one and I couldn't. I know that it was probably 6 or 7 years ago, but I can't be sure. I think you were hiking in that same area if I remember correctly. Amazing story and amazing luck. Well, those are your UFO stories for this time. If you have any story that you want to share, like Camille did, head to the main website at ronsamazingstories.com and click on the story submission banner. Leave your story, give it a title, and tell me where you're from. I'll read it if I can. Are you ready for another story? This one is being brought to us by Gladys Goodies. Good treats for your dog to eat. They use all natural products with no sugar, preservatives, salts, or harmful ingredients. So check out their online store at GladysGoodies.com. That is GladysGoodies.com. And don't forget to use our very own promo code, RONS, to get a 20% discount on all of your purchases. That is RONS. Thank you, Gladys. Our featured story for this time comes from the OTR series X-1. The story takes place in a mountainous region known as Bighorn Glacier. It's an odd tale that looks at what aliens from another world could be like. It was first published in the October 1955 edition of Galaxy magazine. It is titled The Lights of Precipice Peak, and it aired on X-1 on March 13th, 1957.
Countdown for blast off. X-5, 4, 3, 2, X-1, fire. From the far horizons of the unknown come tales of new dimensions in time and space. These are stories of the future, adventures in which you'll live in a million, could be years, on 1,000 maybe worlds. The National Broadcasting Company, in cooperation with Galaxy Science Fiction Magazine, presents
X minus 1.
Tonight, The Lights on Precipice Peak by Stephen Tall.
We were sitting on the porch of the lodge, the three of us, Chuck Evers, Royston, and myself. Chuck was smoking one of those 5 for a quarter stinkers he affects, but he let it go out as we sat in the darkness, stared across the narrow valley below us, then up again to the mountains of Big Horn Glacier, 6 miles away and 7,000 feet up in the thin, cold air.
There it is. You see?
Where?
Well, follow my hand. I'll line it up with a tall pine tree on the first ridge. You see?
Very small, dull red.
It's been up there for about 5 minutes. I didn't see anything before. You see? Moving along. Well, it seems to be the lip of Bighorn Glacier.
Give me the binoculars. Yeah, it's a glow, all right. Small but definite glow. You want to see it, Royston?
Thank you.
Well, that's that. You can see it, but still you can't. The glasses didn't pick up any outline. It's still just a glow.
Spooks, that's what. Spooks.
Spooks? Yes, apparitions.
Haunts, hobgoblins, ghosts, banshees.
Well, at least these mysterious lights of Precipice Peak make no sound.
Are you sure? How do you know that every coyote that you hear is really a coyote?
Well, at any rate, if they make sounds, they're sounds of the country. A miserable country.
Sir, you were speaking of the land I love. If you don't like it, why stay around?
It is supposed to make me a man of vigor with red corpuscles and a need for cold shower baths. Actually, there is nothing wrong with me. I was simply born to sit and watch while great louts like you run and wrestle and climb and sweat. Ah, there, the light shows again.
Now you can see it with a naked eye. It's higher than it was before. It's moving along.
It's going along Fifth Avenue Trail. Spooks don't need a route of ascent even on precipice. All of a sudden, the lights of Precipice Peak are getting solid. Now, I've got a feeling they'll leave a sign.
Sign? Ah, yes. Traces.
Right. Traces, tracks, spores. The only mystery about those lights is we don't know who makes them. They're getting to be a tourist attraction. Maybe that's a lead.
Over the swamps of Louisiana, where I wish I now were, I have seen balls of fire that were drifting. It is swamp gas, methane, slowly oxidizing, glowing. Could this up there on the mountain be something like?
Almost impossible. Anyhow, balls of gases wouldn't follow a trail. Those blasted lights do.
Take it easy, Chuck, boy. Tomorrow you can look for yourself, remember? At daybreak, we go up to solve the mystery of the lights.
Ghastly. To go out at dawn is as bad as eating raw flesh. But tap on my cabin door as you go by. I will wave to you from the window.
We were down the slope from the lodge and across the valley before the sun rose. Chuck and I swung along the trail. It felt good having your nailed mountain boots hitting the ground in regular rhythm. Ahead of me, Chuck set the pace, an easy, loose-jointed shamble that ate up the mountain miles. We were a good team for climbing. I took a deep breath when we crossed the ridge. But at the switchback, Chuck broke his stride and leaned his long frame against a boulder.
Well, tonight we'll be up where the lights are. Punch me if you see one first.
Lights, nuts, there'll be none while we're on the peak. $5 says so.
Well, I'm not a rich man, but I love a sporting chance. Here's my $5. It's a bet. Where'll we put him?
Well, here. I'll empty this out. I got a tobacco tin. Stick it in here.
Okay.
Here's my $5. All right, we'll put it under the stone here. Nobody'll find it under there. It's off the trail. All right, now? If there are lights, it's yours. No lights, it's mine. Right?
Right.
Going into the world above the trees is one of the good things of a peak climb. Hoary marmots whistled from their rocks. Conies scurried. The gray-barred ptarmigan crouched almost invisibly among the gaudy alpine fields of mountain sunflowers and tiny forget-me-nots. At dusk, we laid out our bedrolls on a level bit of tundra in the lee of a massive outcrop near Big Horn Glacier. We cooked a kettle of stew and heated the water for tea. Then Chuck walked away a few paces from the fire to empty the kettle.
Ow!
What's the matter?
A stone turned under me. My ankle. Give me a hand.
I got you.
Oh, set me down again. Okay.
Now let's take off that boot and the sock.
Oh. Well, I have a feeling, my friend, that I will not climb that peak in the morning.
Get the sock off and let's see how bad it is.
Oh.
Well, we'll pack ice on it and tape it in an hour. Maybe it's a simple twist.
Oh, you know it isn't.
Sure, I know. I thought you wanted to be cheerful, that's all. It's like when I broke 3 ribs climbing to look into a bird's nest the day before we were tackling the east face of Long Peak. Then you would chin up.
Well, that was different. I wasn't hurting.
When the stars were out and the quarter moon rose from the plains, I got up from my bedroll seat by the fire. Chuck's ankle was taped, and he was easing it before him as best he could.
Well, that's not so bad for a foot. It only hurts when I try to walk on it.
Well, I want to have a look before we turn in. My 5 spot says there won't be any lights, but the technical crew may be monkeying around somewhere.
Well, take it easy.
I'll just skirt along the edge of the glacier. Back in half an hour. You take it easy. I know Big Horn Glacier. Its crevices are so consistent they're shown on maps. I carried an ice axe, but I didn't figure to use it. And I'd worked my way for a number of minutes along the edge of the moonlit ice sheet. I suddenly got the idea that I should cross it. The glacier had a good snow covering. The going was easy, The view was something few men see. I automatically avoided the big ice cracks. I knew where they were. And then I slipped through a snow roof and fell. I wasn't hurt. The moonlight from the crack above showed my ice axe beside me. It was a lucky fall, except for the fact that I couldn't get out again. Time after time, I tried to dig hand and foot holes into the splintering ice wall. But I was freezing my fingers, making no headway. Cold was beginning to bite into me. So I settled myself on my heels quietly and tried to decide what to do. That was Chuck beginning to call. I knew if I answered, he'd probably try the ice himself, so I kept quiet. And after a while, he stopped calling. And then, suddenly a dark silhouette showed in the narrow crack of sky above.
Are you injured?
I'm okay. Just drop me a rope and I can walk up the wall. Mind the snow ledge. I didn't, and look at me.
A joke? Here's the rope.
Hey, what kind of a rope is this? I never saw anything like it. It's warm.
Have you got it now?
Yep, here I come. Hang on. Okay, over the ledge. Well, hey, did you hold that rope in one hand while I was climbing up?
Yes.
Well, thanks. Lucky for me, somebody has sense enough to walk around ice cracks. Shake.
Shake? Oh, shake hands. You must not mind the glove. It is for your protection. The hand is not yet cooled.
Cooled? What in the world?
Your friend with the swollen foot is concerned for you. Come, I have made an easy way.
I've climbed mountains up and down the Rockies, but I confess, following this fellow, I felt like a tenderfoot. The man's odd voice and stilted phrases tantalized me, yet I knew they were not entirely strange. There was the question of his hot hand. I dropped back a couple of paces. The man was setting his booted feet into a line of holes that had not been on the glacier earlier. I could swear to that. And as we approached the edge of the glacier, I could see him clearly, for he was surrounded by a dim red glow, which grew brighter with each step. In a few moments, it was as if he were outlined in flame, and I could feel a warmth radiating from him. I wondered why the snow didn't melt under his tread.
It's the boots! They insulate!
Oh, I see. Thank you. Hey, you not only light up, but you pick brains. Both good tricks.
A joke?
I guess so.
Only here on Earth are there jokes. We can never be sure about them.
We, huh? I thought a gag like this would take cooperation. How many of you boys are in on it?
We are 4.
We had left the ice. We were threading along the little ledge that gave onto the boulder field. I noticed that the ruddy glow had faded completely, that the man up ahead was now simply a dark silhouette. We reached the tundra and spotted Chuck's tiny fire. He sat next to it, the tape-footed ankle eased on a pack sack before him.
Well, hello. You took your time.
I fell in a crevasse. And I owe you $5.
Oh? Oh! You should put the more important statement first. But we can take that up later. I see we have company.
Oh, yeah. This is Chuck Evers. I'm afraid I didn't catch your name.
I am called Zell.
Zell?
Yes.
Well, it's different anyway.
That is because I am different.
He can read your head like a crystal ball. And he lights up like a neon sign.
Easy, boy. You've slipped on the ice before. Sit down. Let's quit being funny.
Let us all sit, and I will tell you why I am Zell. I will do it because I know when you repeat my words that you will not be believed.
Now, listen.
You listen. You came up to climb the peak, but also you came to see what caused the lights.
If you had not had misfortune, you would have climbed the peak, but there would have been no lights. We would not have come.
Hey, there's a light back up there where we were. You see? That red light on the glacier?
Well, yeah. Yeah, moving across.
That is Zor. We grew in the same membrane. He is erasing our trail across the ice.
Yeah, very smart. We can tell tales down there, but there won't be any proof, huh?
That is correct. Chuck Evers, you are wondering about the statement that we grew in the same membrane?
Well, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking that...
I should have said that we are twins.
Holy... You're right, John. It is telepathy. You weren't out of your head.
The truth is simple. We have told it before, but no one ever believes. And it has not seemed wise to support our facts. We, Zor and I, with our companions Zim and Zet, are explorers. But we do not explore mountains. Here we rest and allow ourselves to behave normally. We explore in towns and cities where people gather. It is strenuous. We cannot tolerate it for long. Then we must go into seclusion and renew ourselves.
Yeah, I know what you mean. 10 days in Denver and I feel like I've been staked with a short rope. I gotta get away.
Your problems are simply a matter of preference. Ours are physiological. We cannot long maintain metabolic balance in the company of people. Thus, Zim and Zet are now back in the world you inhabit. When they must rest, then our turn comes. I will show you. This is a rock. You may call it granite. To me, it is food. So.
Eat it in good health.
Thank you. Among people, this would be conspicuous. You are not adapted to get oxygen from rock. We are.
Well, I'll admit that's a tougher cereal than I'd want to try. But the point of the joke still escapes me.
There is the matter of my body glow. I can control my body temperature, raising it and lowering it as I choose. The greatest difficulty when I am among you people is to keep myself down to human body heat. Normally, it is much higher than yours. And when, due to exercise and metabolic speed-up, excess energy is accumulated, it is satisfying to us to radiate it, much as you get released by deep sighs, by long breaths, by stretching your limbs. Unfortunately, when we radiate rapidly in air, we glow. It has made us conspicuous. Yet your unawareness of us is a marvel. For creatures so well supplied with adaptation for sensation, you are indeed blind.
You sound like an old professor I had once. I didn't understand him either.
Zor is waiting by the glacier. We have plans for this time. When you return to the settlement below, it would perhaps be wisest not to explain the lights.
We both sat silently beside the dying fire. When we looked up toward the upper reaches of the glacier, two gleaming spots, dull cherry red, moved steadily across the ice. They were visible for brief minutes and slowly faded. To descend Precipice Peak, even if only from Big Horn Glacier, is no fit task for a cripple. Still, we knew it had to be done. So in the early morning, we set about it. Where the going allowed it, I simply backpacked Chuck. We made use of every ledge, because Chuck could rappel himself down spots he could not climb or be carried. We were both mountain men and tough, but by mid-afternoon, we knew we'd had enough. We were lucky, though. We ran into Heine Cobb, the ranger, heading down trail with 2 pack horses. We stopped only once, the big switchback. I got down from my horse, pried up a stone, took the tobacco can from under it, and gave it to Chuck without a word. Back at our camp on the lakeshore, Chuck and I weren't disturbed by questions. When men fail on the peaks, they tell their own stories in their own time. Chuck's ankle showed quick improvement, and in a couple of days he was hobbling about. Only young Royston came to visit us.
You have not been back to the lodge. Perhaps you are afraid to show your faces.
People talk your arm off up there. Not many of them have the gall to come snooping around here.
You cannot offend me. I was concerned for you. I was interested, so I came. Did you see the lights?
Nope. Nary a light. I told you they wouldn't show up when anybody was up there.
You collected $5 from me, betting on the other side of the fence. You were the man who was so sure there'd be some sign.
I do not understand. You are both confusing everything, and you are both lying. There were lights on the peak when you were there, and I have a feeling you saw them. They were quite a show from here.
Well, this is the place to see them from. Closer up, you lose perspective.
Well, I must go. Friendship means nothing to you, so I will take my small hike back to the lodge again. Actually, I came to say that tomorrow I leave this miserable place and go home. I've endured all the health I can stand.
Now, that's a different story. We're sorry to see you go, fella.
My regards to the swamps. 10 to 1, when you get there, you'll wish you were back.
This I very much doubt. Goodbye, John. Goodbye.
Oh, there's a funny fella. Hey, what are you doing?
Just feeling the stone step where he sat. I thought so. He really liked us, but this time he was careful not to shake hands. Did you notice?
Yeah.
In spite of himself, he'd reached his limit of control. His temperature is going up.
Yeah, I guess it is.
He never could see a joke. And remember how he'd say something and then wait, as if he didn't understand it? And then all of a sudden it would come to him? He'd wait to pick our brains for every new word.
You mean Royston?
Royston is a name out of a hat. When that lad really goes home, he'll go with his buddies up there on that peak. I wonder which he is. Zim or Zet?
You have just heard X-1, presented by the National Broadcasting Company in cooperation with Galaxy Science Fiction Magazine, which this month features Man in the Jar, the story of Vane, who did not bottle live people indiscriminately. He had to have a sound business reason. Galaxy Magazine on your newsstand today. Tonight, X-1 has brought you The Lights on Precipice Peak, a story from the pages of Galaxy written by Stephen Tall and adapted for radio by Ernest Kenoy. Featured in the cast were Jim Bowles as John Drinkhart, Joseph Helgeson as his fellow climber Chuck Evers, Ted Osborne as Zell, and Kurt Benson as the man who called himself Royston. Your announcer, Fred Collins. X-1 was directed by Kenneth McGregor and is an NBC Radio Network production.
Interesting. I enjoy stories that poke fun at the human race while presenting something compelling, like a race of beings that can eat rock. Pretty cool. The Lights on Precipice Peak was written by Stephen Tall, but that was not his real name. In fact, our author was Compton Newby Crook, a very odd name, but we don't get to pick him. Born in Rossville, Tennessee, Crook studied biology at Peabody College and then did graduate work at Arizona State University. He began teaching biology at Towson University in 1939, where he remained until his retirement in 1973. When you understand his background, the story starts to make a bit more sense. Crook's first published story was as a winner of the Boy Scouts of America short story writing contest. He began publishing science fiction in 1955 with the appearance of The Lights on Precipice Peak. His short story, The Bear with a Knot in His Tail, in 1971, was nominated for a Hugo Award for short fiction. How about that? We all love them and have since granola was invented in 1863. It is the oldest breakfast cereal in the world. Dr. James Caleb Jackson, who ran a health spa in upstate New York, began experimenting with cold cereal as a cure for various ailments. Then, at the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, Illinois in 1893, cream of wheat burst onto the scene. It went on to become a breakfast favorite and is still going strong today. Here's a commercial for cream of wheat from the late 1930s.
Yes, we have it every day. We sing this song, it will make us strong, and it makes us shout, hooray! It's good for growing babies and grown-ups to eat. For all the family's breakfast, you can see cream of wheat.
In 1921, Wheaties hit the scene. It was created as a result of an accidental spill of a wheat bran mixture onto a hot stove by a worker for the Washburn Crosby Company, which would eventually become, General Mills. Here is a vintage Wheaties commercial from the 1940s.
Maybe you're sort of tired of eating the same old thing day after day. Maybe you'd like to try something different, something delicious. Something with a marvelous flavor that just knocks the spots off any other cereal you've ever tried. Now, if that's the case, why don't you ask your mother to let you have a big bowl of crackly, crunchy, golden brown Wheaties flakes tomorrow morning? Ask your mother to let you have a cereal you'll really like the taste of. Ask her for the big, husky cereal for wide-awake fellows and girls who not only start things, but who see them through. You'll say it's swell.
Fried Wheaties. They're whole wheat with all of the brands. Won't you try Wheaties? For wheat is the best food of man. They're crispy, they're crunchy the whole year through. Jack Hampton never tires of them, and neither will you. So just buy Wheaties, the best breakfast food in the land.
Well, that's all we have time for today. Come back again for more old-time radio commercials that should make you smile. Well, that was UFO episode number 489, and our storytellers were John Beck, Ryan Morris, Leonard Strickland, and Camille Brewer. Thank you, guys. You're the best. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button makes us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.